With this small slidecast, I would like to give you an idea of how I believe that the Vienna development method, also called VDM, can be used to improve the quality of requirement specifications in industrial applications. Here's the agenda I'd like to cover in this slidecast. I will start by letting us all get a common understanding of what a requirement specification is. I'll proceed by discussing where these are used and what they're used for. Afterwards, I'll discuss what the consequences can be if mistakes are made in requirement specifications. Then I'll try to give characteristics of a good specification. Afterwards, I'll present how I think that VDM models can be used to improve requirement specifications. And finally, I'll attempt to substantiate that by mentioning a number of different projects where this has been demonstrated. Let's first agree upon what we understand about requirement specification. In essence, it is a statement about the needs or characteristics required by a customer and that the development team needs to deliver. The essential issue is that both the customer and the development team need somehow to be able to understand each other in a way that enables measuring the degree of conformance. A specification needs to be both precise and have no ambiguities, and it must be written in a way that enables one to predict how the newly developed system will behave afterwards. Requirement specifications can be used under different circumstances, depending upon the type of the project and the different needs of the stakeholders involved. In different kinds of project types, different stakeholders act as customers and suppliers. In particular, companies that produce products will have their own IT development department that typically develops the software in-house. Sometimes such development teams will be assisted by external consultants working on time and material type of contracts. In other cases, organizations opt for a COTS product, and in those cases, it's mainly a matter of configuring and adapting such COTS software. Finally, we have the projects where requirement specification is used for potentially tendering between different potential external suppliers. And here it's really important that the common understanding is reached about what the requirement specification wants. Requirement specifications are used for different purposes by different stakeholders. For customers, they will be considered a specification to form the technical part of the contract. For managers of a development project, requirements are typically numbered, and these are used to measure progress during development. For software architects, the specifications describe what to design. For software designers, realizing the system that the specification defines the range of acceptable implementations that can be chosen. Finally, for quality assurance, it's used for validation and verification, for example, planning tests. In one case, it's not getting requirement specifications right can have drastic consequences. It's well known that fixing errors early is cheap. On the other hand, fixing errors late can be very costly to repair and give both cost and time overruns. In addition, can have severe consequences on the time to market, since in most cases, errors will only show up at integration time, and thus one potential consequence is that substantial time delays can occur. Using something like VDM to model the functional requirements can discover problems with the specification very early, and as a consequence, such problems can be avoided. VDM is naturally not a wonder medicine that always can guarantee that, but if the VDM modeler is experienced and has the right engineering skills to know what to abstract away, this is demonstrated in improving other specifications. The main characteristics of a good specification are listed here. Important characteristics include correctness, unambiguity, completeness, consistency, verifiability, modifiability, and traceability. Formal notation such as VDM can assist in achieving some of these characteristics. These characteristics are fully aligned with the SMART principle also used in industry. Trying to formulate an abstract VDM model from a natural language specification typically uncovers a list of issues in such an informal specification. In my experience, these issues typically fall outside the so-called sunshine scenarios. For example, when a UML model has been produced, the basic sunshine scenarios are properly dealt with, but the complexity of how errors are handled are typically not covered correctly. It's also my experience that there is a discrepancy between how essential terms are understood by different stakeholders. This is really critical, in particular when the customer and the development team have different interpretation of a term. The process of a specification often uncovers the implicit assumptions, allowing them to be made explicit. In general, VDM can substantially improve the comprehension of large and complex requirement specifications. This also provides a means by which to order and prioritize information using abstraction. The main challenge is that the VDM modeler needs to have the engineering skill to determine what parts to abstract away, but this needs to be related to a specific purpose of the modeling. In most cases that I have personally worked with, modeling has focused mostly on functional requirements, and here it can be very valuable. In general, VDM can be used to improve the characteristics of requirement specification by reducing the cases of ambiguity and ensuring correctness and consistency, and to some extent completeness of the specification. For this slide, I'd like to give you very brief statements by a number of selected cases where VDM has been used to clarify requirement specifications and overall concepts in general. Many years ago, when I worked with a large US-based defense contractor, my VDM models were able to detect missing links between systems in a very complex application. Here, the domain expert wondered how I was able to detect these issues at a very early stage in the process, because they could remember the seriousness of the problems caused by discovering these issues late in other programs. In the first commercial project where I acted as a VDM consultant for an application with British Aerospace, a lot of measurements were collected, including the kind of questions that was raised against the requirement specification. Here, a parallel development with the conventional approach was carried out, and more than double as many questions were raised in the exceptional cases. And later on, it turned out that this caused a serious error in the overall development. A colleague of mine used VDM in a large application in the Netherlands in order to master the complexity of the most complicated component. Here the results were outstanding, since this component was the only one that was completed at expected time and cost, and the only one without any errors discovered afterwards. Another colleague in the UK used VDM to discover important differences in interpretation of terms in a requirement specification caused by different assumptions by the stakeholders. In Japan, a number of projects have demonstrated the value of modeling requirement specifications using VDM, and they have provided cost metrics that show the consequences of this. Finally, the last one I'll mention here is from another colleague from the UK. In that, a large 370-page document was produced using a UML model. The sunshine scenarios were appropriately described, but lots of problems were discovered in the treatment of different types of errors. For those of you who would like to see further evidence of this, feel free to contact me to get more details as well as pointers to a selection of papers. One of these formal methods that I have primarily worked with is called VDM. And VDM fits the need here because it has a relatively simple notation with a function and data-driven paradigm based on discrete mathematics. The tool support for VDM is well suited for abstract modeling and initial analysis. It's very easy to get hold of training and support, both for the tool and the method. VDM is one of the most mature formal methods, which has been used industrially for a long time. So it's not just an academic toy. There is an established international language board maintaining the notation. There is a small but active research community making new developments for VDM. Finally, I think that it's fair to say that it's popular, at least in Japan, where I've been several times. I hope that this slidecast has been worth your time.